Welcome back to the Real Life Theology Podcast. Today we get to feature a special episode from the 2025 Renew Gathering featuring Bob Russell and grandparent disciple making. This episode will help us understand how grandparents can significantly influence their grandchildren's spiritual and personal development through consistent presence, practical wisdom, genuine love. Let's get into it.
Wayne Smith participated in that. How many of you remember Wayne Smith in here? One of the funniest guys ever. And he hated to write sermons, but he would come to our sermon study group. Is this on?
That's just a recorder.
Oh, you mean this? There's no amplification here?
They didn't set up any amplification.
Okay. Can you hear me in the back? Okay, I'll do my best to project. I had a guy move from Lexington to Louisville, and he was under Wayne Smith's preaching for years. And Wayne, he could split the pulpit. He was a dynamic preacher. And he came to Louisville, and he came to our church. And I wanted to be a dynamic preacher, but no matter how hard I tried, it always came out like this. And so this guy took me out to lunch. He'd been an elder under Wayne Smith, and he said, I feel like, Bob Russell, you've never let yourself go in the pulpit. If you just let yourself go, you would be more effective. I said, I'm going as hard as I can go. So I don't have a big voice, but let's talk about being a blessing to your grandchildren. And if you want to raise your hand and interrupt me, there's a live audience, not to disagree with me, but to ask a question. Or the first time that I'm aware of that the Bible talks about significant influence of grandparents is Genesis 48, when Jacob blesses his two grandsons, and he had never met those two boys. When his son Joseph was sold as a slave to Egypt, Jacob had been told by his other sons that he had been devoured by a wild animal. And 2 decades later, he learned that Joseph was alive and was the prime minister of Egypt. Joseph reestablished communication with his dad, brought him down to Egypt so the family could survive the horrible famine in Canaan. And they settled in northern Egypt, nearest to their homeland. And Genesis 48:1 says, sometime later, Joseph was told, your father is ill. So he took his 2 sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, along with him. And when Jacob was told, your son Joseph has come to you, Israel, Jacob, rallied his strength and sat up on the bed. And when Jacob saw the sons of Joseph, he asked, who are these? They're the sons God has given me here, Joseph said to his father. Then Israel said, bring them to me so that I may bless them. Now Israel's eyes were failing because of his old age, and he could hardly see them. So Joseph brought his sons close to him, and his father kissed them and embraced them. And he said to Joseph, I never expected to see your face again, and now God has allowed me to see your children also. Then Joseph removed them from Israel's knees and bowed down with his face to the ground. And Joseph took both of them, Ephraim on his right toward Israel's left hand, and Manasseh on his left toward Israel's right hand, and brought them close to him. But Jacob reached out his right hand and put it on Ephraim's head, though he was the younger, and crossing his arms, he put his left hand on Manasseh's head, even though Manasseh was the firstborn. And then he blessed Joseph and said, may the God before whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked, the God who's been my shepherd all my life to this day, the angel who has delivered me from all harm, may he bless these boys. May they be called by my name and the names of my father Abraham and Isaac, and may they increase greatly on the earth. Well, you know the story. Joseph tried to reverse his hands, and Jacob said, I know this is the older, this is the younger. The older, he's going to be great, but the younger is going to be even greater. And he blessed them that day and said, in your name will I pronounce this blessing. Now think about that. Jacob was a very imperfect man. He had a sordid past, known as a cheater, con man. He had an imperfect marriage, 2 wives, a couple concubines. He had very imperfect children. They had beaten up Joseph, sold him as a slave. He went through all kind of financial stress, famine that nearly wiped him out. But in the end, he blesses his grandchildren. And his 12 sons become the heads of 12 tribes. His grandsons, Ephraim and Manasseh, were part of that lineage, and his son Judah was the forefather of Messiah. One of the blessings of getting older is you see the generational impact of spiritual truth. And you see it transferred to children and their children and their children. And so let's talk about how you can bless your grandchildren or your great-grandchildren and be the best blessing you can be. Gary Smalley has written a book called The Blessing, which is one of my wife's favorite books. And he talks about how we ought to just constantly be on the alert to be a blessing to our children. I'm going to list 9 or 10 things, and some of them will be a little bit duplicate of what I said in the main session. But again, if you have a question or a comment, raise your hand. Number 1, a good relationship with your grandchildren is much more likely if you have a good relationship with their parents. A good relationship with the grandchildren is much more likely if you have a good relationship with their parents. One comedian suggested the reason grandparents and grandchildren get close so easily is they have a common enemy. And the truth is, the most important thing you can do is to have a good relationship with the parents and reinforce the parents' values if they share your faith. Ephraim and Manasseh saw Joseph kneel before his father. They saw the love that Jacob had for Joseph as he wept. And if the parents love and respect you, they are more likely to transfer that same spirit onto their children. If parents resent you or they have a condescending attitude toward you, the children will sense that, become distant and disrespectful. So if you're at odds with your children, swallow your pride, quit worrying about who was right and wrong, reach out and do your best to reestablish right relationships. Better still, avoid the stupid mistakes that get you there. We had a family member who was expecting a child, and she and her mother have a tense relationship, but the mother came to stay with her for 2 weeks after the baby was born, helped out. That was good. But when she left, she handed her daughter an envelope and said, "Your dad and I think this is the best thing that we can give you at this time." The mother left, the daughter opened the envelope, and it was a $40 gift certificate to Weight Watchers. Don't do that. That hurts the relationship. Use your head. When your kids are old enough to get married, you are to have a goal to be a friend of theirs. And you can be a friend of theirs as close as they choose to be, because the ball is in their court. You've done all the damage you can do, and your job now is to be an encourager. You move from being a disciplinarian and an instructor to a counselor. All you can do is encourage. That's the key word. I've got a son, Tommy's dad, preaches in Florida. Great preacher, great church. But I watch him online. He does not dress the way a preacher ought to dress. And he's got this beard. I'm looking for any duplication in here. Stand up. Wingfield, stand up. Now my son's is worse. He looks like he's Amish, okay? Hey, his mother hates that beard. And so after the sermon, I call him. You know what I say to him? Good sermon. Because I'm not his advisor anymore. And you know what? The same is true with their practices as a parent. They may not discipline your grandchildren the way you want them to. They may not put the kids to bed at the time you think they should put them to bed. They may not dress the kids warm enough in the winter. They may not spend as much time with them as you think they should. They may not come home at Thanksgiving or Christmas. Keep your mouth shut. Encourage them, reinforce them through the grandkids. Maybe write this down. You are an invited consultant to your kids. You're an invited consultant to your kids, and until they invite you, keep quiet. And then when they invite you, be very tactful. Okay? Somebody said, if you can't be tactful, at least be vague. Be gentle. Number 2, I mentioned this in the main session. The younger years are usually the most fun. The older years are probably the most important. Jacob missed out on the younger years watching these boys grow up, but he still was able to be a blessing to his grandchildren when they were older. Usually the younger years are fun, not always. I made a mistake one time. I had my daughter-in-law, Lisa, married to my son Phil in Louisville, who's a policeman, had a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old, and she wanted to go Christmas shopping in the worst way. And I had the afternoon free, and I said, I'll tell you what, I'll take care of them. She said, really? I said, yeah, you're going to be gone 3 hours. I'll be able to handle them for 3 hours. I had no idea what I was getting into. She was gone, and all of a sudden I felt really alone. I said, what am I going to do? I took them down to the lower level. It was Christmas time. I said, I'm going to get out that train set and put it up around the Christmas tree. They'll get involved in that. I wasn't a third of the way through, and the 1-year-old, this toddler, he stepped on the train and broke it. And I thought, I've got to do something else. And then I did something I tell parents not to do. I got out a video. And I said, let's watch this video. And then it wasn't 10 minutes, and the 4-year-old said, whew, Chapman, you have a dirty diaper. I said, oh, no, dirty diaper down here in lower level. And I opened him up, and it was all over the place. I said, what am I going to do? I said, Andy, run upstairs and get the diaper bag. He got to the top of the steps, and he said, Pop, somehow I locked the door. Or our basement door, if it's locked from inside, you can't get out. And this diaper was fumigating the whole place. I said, if the place burns down, I won't be able to get out. What am I going to do? Well, I got to get this diaper changed. And I got him in the bathroom, and I put his diaper in the sink, and I scrubbed him off as best I could. Had no diaper, and I had to put his pants back on, come in. He gave me the strangest look, and I said, kid, that's the way it's going to be the rest of the day. And that's just the beginning of what I said. I got to find some way to get out. And I'd never done it. I got a safety pin, and I actually picked the lock, and I opened it up. And I was never so glad to see my daughter-in-law get back after 3 hours. I heard Wayne Smith use that poem. I've seen the lights of Paris. I've seen the lights of Rome, but the greatest lights I've ever seen are the taillights taking my grandkids home. So they're fun when they're younger, but not always. But they get older, and if you, as I mentioned, you go to their ball games and you sit, and you go to their horse shows, or you go to their recital, and you don't know anything about it, but afterward you speak to them briefly. They just know you're there as a presence, and they will say, "Thanks, Pop, for coming," or "Thanks, Nana, for coming." And that's it. They're more interested in their peers. Tommy, this kid's sitting here. He's a shocker. He's one of those kids, he can do anything. He got a 35 on his ACT, missed 136. So he gets a free ride to Liberty University, gets this degree. But when he's in high school, a freshman in high school, he decides he wants to play football. Now in Florida, if you're homeschooled, which he was, you get to play football. But Tommy, what'd you weigh, 135 pounds? Not quite that. And this school of 2,000 kids. I said, he won't last. He didn't come up through the Pop Warner system. He won't last 3 days. And they put him on the scrub team. He got tar beat out of him, but he kind of liked it. And he kind of deserved it. And he hung with it whole freshman year, sitting on the end of the bench. Sophomore year, sitting on the end of the bench. Junior year on the varsity, sitting on the end of the bench. Senior year, he's starting. I said, how did he get? I was so proud of him in this large, competing for state championship. He's a starter. And so every game I'd watch on live stream and then text back and forth about the game. And I flew down for their game against the rivals. 5,000 people at this ball game. And they got beat on a field goal in the last second. And I went out on the field at the end of the game with his parents and all the parents and grandparents and the coach. And the coach said, this is not the end. We're going to be in the playoffs. We'll meet this team again. They were pumping them up. Then he said, who will have our closing prayer? Tommy raised his hand. Public school. And I was so proud. I grabbed my phone and I started going to take a picture. I took a selfie. And the prayer was so short, I didn't get it all. But, you go through that after the game, just say, proud of you, Tommy. And then you can ask questions. What were you thinking when the guy kicked the field goal? Or I can say to Kimberly, my granddaughter, when your horse approaches that jump, are you nervous? And you're just establishing a relationship. You're going to say, now, do you pray before you jump? No. You're just wanting them to feel comfortable with you. Or when you say, let's ride and get some pizza. And they ride, you don't start badgering them with questions. Did you read your Bible today? Or how things going to church? Just sit and be silent. You want them to feel comfortable with you. And then sometimes when they drive back on the way home, when they're about 3 minutes from home, they dare to start asking questions because they know there's going to be an escape here pretty soon and get away from you. But it's establishing that relationship that you genuinely care. And then eventually they start asking some questions, or they come and say, hey, I've got this job as a worship leader. Do you have any suggestions? Number 3. I mentioned this also this morning. The best way to get close to them and have influence with them is to arrange one-on-one time with them. I talked about the birthday trip that my wife established, and it's been really good to find some time just to have one-on-one. And it's seldom the big deal that makes an impact, but it's the little everyday experiences. Take advantage of them. In our minds, we think we're going to plan these big deals. We're going to go to Disneyland, or we're going to go to Hawaii, and we're going to have this great family time together. And then years later, when I ask what really impacted you, they won't mention the big deal. It's a common, everyday experiences where you better have your antenna up. My grandson Charlie, my oldest grandson, when he's 15, got into fishing. For some reason, he liked to fish. He'd get a little pole and they had a pond not far from it. I said, I need to learn to fish. I'm not big into fishing, but I need to learn to fish so I can sit by the pond with Charlie and we can talk spiritual things. And a guy in the church said, hey, we're planning a fishing trip to Canada. And you ought to take Charlie there. Even you would catch fish, he said. Go to Canada. He said, you'd establish great memories. And I said, that's probably right. That'd be a great thing. If I'm going to take Charlie, I ought to take his dad. It'd be 3 generations. So I paid for 3 plane trips to Minneapolis, 3 bus trips, round trip from Minneapolis to the Boundary Waters, 3 of those float planes in 2 rooms in the lodge, Indian guides, shore dinner, everything. I mean, it was super expensive. And we had a good time. On the way home, I said to Charlie, what do you think's the best memory we had? He said, the best day, Pop, was the day it rained and we couldn't fish and we stayed in the lodge and the guys taught me how to play Texas Hold'em. I could have done that in the basement of my house. It's a short drive to get pizza. Or it's a spontaneous project of maybe planting some flowers to get them back, or playing catch. In preparation for workshop on grandparenting, my wife asked our 7 grandkids what they remembered about grandparents growing up. They didn't talk about those elaborate, expensive trips. They talked about chocolate chip cookies before they went to bed, Bible stories and questions I asked. Coming over to our house after church on Saturday night and hearing me shout at U of L players in a basketball game, playing catch in the backyard, the little things they did on a regular basis that created memories and solidified relationships. Somebody said, you live in the precious present. You take advantage of every opportunity. We did have this practice when the kids stayed over our house. Judy'd make chocolate chip cookies. I'd read a Bible story to them, and then I'd ask questions about the Bible story. And his dad is a preacher. My other son is a policeman. And one night the kids were a little older, the policeman's son, and Andy and Chapman were staying over, and I read the Bible story, and they'd had a rough day, and they were both really tired. They couldn't answer not the simplest question about what I just read. And they could tell I was getting a little exasperated about the 4th question. And Andy said, hey, Pop, We're Phil's kids. We're not Rusty's kids. And those are great memories. No big deal. Number 5, use your financial resources wisely. I mentioned that today. Let me tell you how I started that. When that passage in John's Gospel says, use worldly wealth to make friends of yourselves, so that when it's gone, you'll be welcomed into eternal dwellings. It's just the opposite of what people do. They use worldly wealth to hoard it up, so they have as much. Their self-worth is tied to their net worth, and they keep hoarding it up, and they say, well, I'm going to will it to my children. And when they die at 85, their children are 60, and the kids don't need it anymore. When do they need the money? When they're 30, 35, 40, they got young kids, they got kids going off to college. That's when they need the money. So I told myself, if I'm a good steward of my money, I'm not going to keep a lot around and get caught with it when I die. Jesus said, don't store it up. So I told my kids, look, when I die, you're not going to inherit a lot of money. But I will share with you the extra that I make during the course of the year, and so that when you need it. So every Christmas, I don't worry about a Christmas present. I just write out a generous check, and it's a generous check, put it in a white envelope, hang it on the Christmas tree. And I'm telling you, it is the grand finale of Christmas. After all the gifts are open, one of those kids will go grab one of those white envelopes, and my son and his wife will get over to the side and open up. My daughters-in-law will squeal, and they'll come over and say, oh, thanks, Pop, you really helped us out. And my sons come over and pat me on the back. Thanks, Dad, really appreciate it. You really bailed me out. How's your health? You got a lot of speaking engagements next year. They're not hoping I die, so they get their hands. They're hoping I keep on living so I keep on giving. So that's what started me to say, what extra I have, I'm going to share with my grandchildren as well. And that pop scholarship we talked about, so they don't get any tattoos whenever they're in school. Use your financial blessings wisely. Number 6, is that where we are? 5, whatever number. Take advantage of technology. I talked about that. It's a golden opportunity to stay connected. I've got an older sister who's brilliant. I mean, she's the valedictorian of the school, graduated from honors. But when technology came along and she tried to learn, and the grandkids were sharper at it than she was, it embarrassed her. And so she refused to learn. And it cut her off. And I really regret that, because I wanted my grandchildren to know her, but she didn't learn to text or to email. And so if you have to learn slow, I'm a slow texter. I'm like this. My grandkids can do it really fast, but it just when Tommy, I learned he got a 35 on the ACT test out of 36, meant a free ride to college. I texted him, "Congratulations on 35. I'm incredibly proud of you. Way to go. I'm going to brag about you to everyone I know, but stay humble. You may be a lot smarter than your pop, but you're still not as smart as your dad." And he texts back, "Ha ha, yeah, thanks." That was it. That's all you get sometimes, but it's a morsel. One of my favorites, Andy, is going to Christian school and taking a Bible class at Christian Academy. He texted me, "Hey, Pop, this is Andy. I have 2 teachers who contradict each other about a certain topic. One goes to Southern Seminary, and the other is an ordinary teacher. One is teaching about God's sovereignty over us. For example, he's shown multiple verses that God causes all things without doing evil. Whereas the other teacher believes God cannot cause a hurricane that can kill people. He says he allows it, but he does not cause it. I know you're a brilliant, great teacher and preacher and have all the answers. What do you think?" That wasn't in the text, but it should have been. So he asked this question about Reformed theology. And I give him a kind of a long email about hyper-Calvinism and Arminianism. And he responds, "Yeah, we talked about those things." And sometimes, every once in a while, there'll be a breakthrough. And they'll want to talk to you about spiritual truth. But it's a result of a relationship that you've had over a period of time and an opportunity to speak through social media. Number 7, the best contribution you can make is to share spiritual values with your grandchildren, but that usually happens spontaneously. Let me say a word to some of you here whose grandchildren are not walking with the Lord. It breaks your heart that they've drifted away, tears you up that they're on travel ball and missing church. Or you can tell by their habits or their language, lifestyle, they don't have much of a spiritual foundation. And if that's the case for you, be as wise as serpents and harmless as doves. You're not going to do any good nagging or chastising their parents, but you can lovingly plant seeds and hope the root will grow and produce later. But when they stay over at your house, you read a Bible story to them. You have prayer with them at the meal, prayer before they go to bed. They're there on Sunday morning, you take them to church on Sunday morning, and you share some books and videos with them. Let them hear you pray. Let them see you read the Bible. Give them exposure to Christian people. I think my sons would say, Tommy would say, one of the great blessings we've had is the people who have been in our home. And some of the saints that have been spiritual leaders, our kids have had exposure to. Moses told the Israelites, these commandments that I give you today, talk about them when you sit at home, when you walk along the road, and when you lie down, and when you get up. Tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them on your forehead. You go through our house, and my wife has a wall hanging, God does immeasurably more. Or, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Don't fear tomorrow, God is already there. And those are constant reminders of planting seeds in even grandchildren who are not being raised in the Lord, that as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. One of the things that you can do before you die, write a letter to be read after you die. Your grandkids probably won't listen to many things that you say, but if you write a letter and you have it along with your will, and you say, I just want to remind you of what's really important in life, and you keep it brief but succinct without being too preachy, they will read that. And it's a way that God will reach out to them even after you die.
Bob, do you write individual letters to each grandkid?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it's going to be personal. It's also a great way to encourage. We're always looking for opportunities. When my wife and I celebrated our 50th anniversary 10 years ago. And my 2 sons came to me, appreciate it. They said, Dad, we know that your 50th anniversary is coming up, so we've reserved the fireside room at church for you to have a big reception. I said, I can't think of anything I'd rather not do. That's like after church on Sunday morning, standing there shaking hands. People come out on Sunday afternoon. You don't want to be there. They don't want to be there. Why are we going through that? I said, let's take the same money and we've always had some great vacations in Smoky Mountains. Let's rent a cabin down there in the Smokies where just the family comes. And we spend 3 or 4 days as a family. And we have our own worship service. And we spent 3 days. And they sat us down and they interviewed us. What was your wedding like? Why did you fall in love? All these kind of things. And the grandkids are sitting there listening to that stuff so much better than a reception. But you got to be a little creative. Now, they came in 2 weeks. We're going to celebrate our 60th, and we're going back 18 people. Boy, it's expensive as you get older. But it'll be worth it. Everybody's excited about this cabin we've rented in the Smokies, and we're going to have assignments. The 3 younger boys are going to, we have family gathering every night. The 3 younger grandkids are going to give a devotional at the end, and we'll probably have Tommy lead worship and Charlie preach on Sunday morning. And those kind of memories tie the family together. Along with, I mentioned about that what was it again? The family group chat that my wife started. It is fantastic that keeps us together. And if you're believers and you're in the family group chat and you're talking about the baptisms or I taught this class, it's just enough gentle persuasion to stay in the fold and want to be a part of that family. Here's another suggestion, number 7, number 8, I don't know where we are. Listen, if you don't schedule it, it probably won't happen. We have 3 grandchildren who live 15 minutes away. Well, we got 2 now. The one has got married and she's living in Nashville, 3 hours away. And we have Tommy's family. They live in Port Charlotte, Florida, 15 hours away by car. And we've managed to stay close to the family in Florida by texting and by Skyping, calling. But there's a tendency to neglect the local family, and you wind up going for weeks not really getting together or spending time with somebody who lives 15 minutes away. And you erroneously assume you're going to spend time together as the kids get older because they're nearby, and you get caught up in their separate activities and your separate activities, and you drift apart. And my wife initiates contact and plans the times to be together. And somebody's got a birthday coming up, so she'll call, when can we get together? Well, we can't do it Sunday night. We can't do it. How about, so she'll find someday. Okay, let's get together for a birthday party. Or, hey, we're going out to eat at Five Guys. You guys want to join us? Call them a few minutes before. But almost once a week, she will find some way to get together, maybe Sunday night in the evening for pizza or something. And then after pizza, a lot of times we'll sit around the table, we start talking about current events, we start talking about the sermon we heard, and those grandkids are sitting there and they're entering into the discussion about cultural issues and about wokeism, and they're able to contribute. We listen carefully what they have to say, and those family discussions are incredible, but they would not happen if you don't initiate it and you stay with it. We do so much better when the television is off, or once in a while we'll play games. Let's play a game of spinner. Let's play so that everybody's involved, everybody's talking. But if there's somebody in the family has got to schedule it. Somebody in the family has got to be tenacious enough to find a time when we can get together. We got 2 more. Then we'll see if there are any questions before we quit. Be wise enough not to center your life on your grandchildren. I have some friends whose whole life revolves around their grandkids. They can't take trips with us because they'd miss a ball game or a horse show. They miss church because their grandson's traveling team is playing out of town. They got to be there. And as they get older, their circle of friends shrink, and their opportunities to deepen and enjoy new activities are missed because Christ and the church are replaced by grandkids. That is not healthy for you. It is not healthy for them. Your grandchildren become spoiled and develop an unrealistic self-importance. And you are setting yourself up for disappointment when they move on with life and you're sitting home alone. I've got a friend who goes to Florida every year. He's got a grandson who, as a sophomore in high school, became a really good basketball player. And he's tempted to stay in Louisville, Kentucky, so he can go to all his grandson's basketball games. But he and his wife go to Florida because they got a lot of friends in Florida. That's an important part of their life. And you know what? He watches the game through live stream, or he will phone his grandson afterward, and he stays involved with what he's doing, but his whole life does not center around his grandson's basketball games. He is the grandfather, he's not the father, and he's not expected to be there all the time. He has a life, and his grandson respected that. And he told his granddad, when I get to be 81, I want to be like my grandfather. He's still active. He's fun to be around. He has a lot of fun. He's involved in his church. So don't let your whole life center on your grandkids. Now, there are exceptions. when the parents are absent and irresponsible, and you become the father figure or the fill-in mother. And I bless you for doing that. I've got a friend whose daughter is an addict, and he's raised the 2 kids, and I think are going to be a star in his crown. But some of you are locked in because you babysit for your grandchildren, and the parents say they don't have the resources to pay for a babysitter. That can be a blessing. You're with your grandkids, and you can instill spiritual values in them, but don't let them exploit you. You find out they have the resources to buy a new motorcycle, maybe they can help pay for a babysitter on occasion. You're not automatic babysitter. We have a life too. And so be balanced, and don't let your whole life center on your grandchildren. And the last one I mentioned today, the way to make the biggest impact on your grandchildren is to finish strong spiritually. In Deuteronomy 4, the Bible says, "Be careful and watch yourselves closely so that you do not forget the things that your eyes have seen, or let them fade from your heart as long as you live." You teach them to your children and to their children after them. I get disappointed in older people in the church who've been Christians for years and somehow go spiritually AWOL in their later years. They retire to Florida, their mate dies, they meet somebody, and they live together without marriage. I see grandparents approve of behavior they would have never tolerated years ago. Oh, let them go. Kids, everybody's smoking marijuana these days. Oh, let them stay in a motel room on prom night. Everybody's doing it. I guess I can help out to pay for that abortion. Don't expect me to take a stand against homosexuality. I've got a grandchild who's gay. We begin to compromise. I have a friend in ministry. His wife of 47 years left him for somebody she met on the chat room. And her kids are devastated. The grandkids are just totally shook because they believe their grandma was a good Christian. Their security was shaken. So don't let them fade from you as you get older. And it's your character that is going to matter. I'm just going to stop there and see if we've got questions. I've got some other things, but we'll stop.
On number 7, I think, I didn't get it all. If you don't skip, no, that was not it. Which one? Maybe it's number 6, the best contributions are made.
The best contributions you make is to share spiritual values with your grandchildren, and that usually happens spontaneously.
What was the point right before that? What was the point right before the one you just read?
I don't know. The point before that one? Take advantage of technology, social media.
My numbering of it from 6 to
Is there an application to kids that aren't yours? We don't have grandkids and may not, but there are a lot of kids in the church that need that. Is there a...
Super question. I think especially if you don't have grandchildren, there are kids in the church hungry for some mature leadership. And I've seen it happen again and again that an older person in the church will single out. Don't try to do too many at a time. But just like you can be a big brother or big sister to somebody, you can be a grandparent to somebody. And you single out somebody who needs it. And you talk with their parents first or get permission so that you have total trust. And then you take them out to eat. You do some little things at first. And then eventually it can be some more involved things. But what a help. I grew up in a family, it was large, 6. I had a younger sister, and there was a lady, Mrs. Langley, in our church. She kind of adopted my sister as her granddaughter because as I mentioned, we weren't close to our grandparents. And I remember she took Kathy on a train ride. I'd never been on a train ride. She took Kathy on a train ride. And we felt she was so privileged to have this lady in the church who showed special attention to her. And I think that's a great opportunity. But you have to base that, in my thinking, on the interest of that child. Just because you like baseball doesn't mean that child's going to like baseball. He's got a brother who, he didn't get the Russell gene. He is like 6 feet, 250 pounds. He came up Pop Warner football. The coaches are salivating over him and telling Rusty he'll get a football scholarship. In 9th grade, Johnny said, I don't want to play football. I was so mad at him. You know what he likes to do? He's a musician. He plays the keyboard in the worship band. He plays other instruments. He loved football game going on, Super Bowl. He's reading something, but you ask him a question about some musical question, he'll go on for an hour and talk to you about it. And I don't know the right questions to answer, but I had to learn quickly and say, you know what? He's not wired to play football. That's not a passion of his, but he is a musician in a football player's body. And I can encourage that and tell him, boy, you really played well this morning. And I've got to accept that. But I think if you're going to adopt somebody in the church, get to know that kid a little bit so you know where, when the Bible talks about in Proverbs, train up a child in the way that he should go when he's old and not depart from it. Sometimes the way he should go has to do with his natural bent. What is he gifted to do? Great question, though. Thank you.
Along with that, our family is used to adopting kids. I mean, as my kids have grown up, they've always brought other kids along, and they've become disciples and everything. Well, one of them is he was from Thailand, so he became a part of our family. But over time, they have gone a different direction. And how do you continue, because they've always come to like family things. They literally were a part of everything we did as a family. So whether it's your own kid or a kid you adopted, I guess, I mean, how does your family continue to function? I guess as far as boundaries and sharing.
When somebody who's been included in the family in the past, they go a different direction. You're talking about spiritually a different direction? Yeah. You have to be perceptive and include them in hopes of bringing them back on occasion, but be protective of that inner circle of the family. You also have to be perceptive about whether these people are influencing your own children negatively. My older sister became friends with a woman. When she was in college, the woman was married to a guy who was a great athlete, funny, fun to be around, but he was as worldly as he could be. I was a sophomore in school, and I was attracted to this guy. And I began to spend some time with this guy, and my mother was perceptive enough to see he was influencing me. He was teaching me some things that I didn't need to learn. And so she was bold enough to say to my sister, Cindy, the girl's name, can come, but tell her not to bring her husband anymore. And that upset me, but my mother was smart. And there does come that time when you gotta protect those little chicks under your wing if there's a wolf in sheep's clothing that is drawing them aside. And that's the parent's responsibility. And if it's not, secondly, it lies on the grandparents, I guess. But I think you can invite those people back to occasion, but I wouldn't bring them back very often if they're going to negatively impact those kids.
You talk about how sometimes when they get older, they go amoral spiritually, and you listed nothing for an abortion, grandchild homosexual. What advice would you give to grandparents? How do you love your kids, grandkids unconditionally, and hold that line?
Yeah. It's really hard because you feel like you're nagging at them all the time. You're looking for an opportunity to jump in there. You want to love them, but you can't approve of their behavior. And when I talk to parents about that, I say, or grandparents, look, sit down and write your kids a letter and say, I disagree with your marriage choice, and I'm not going to be at the wedding, or I disagree with the theology of you're embracing, but I'm not going to nag you about it. I want you to know my position is not going to change, but I'm going to love you. And you're welcome to come to my home. Now, your gay lover can't come here, or your cohabitation partner can't come here and spend the night. Here are the guidelines, here are the rules, but I want to love you. Now, if they go from there and they push you away, that's up to them, but you've done what you could. Then when they come back, you don't have to feel like, should I bring it up again? Should I bring it up again? You've communicated it, and then go on and love them.
Because I've struggled in, how do you balance the love the person and not the sin? How do you speak into a person's life if you've shaken the sand off your sandals?
Well, I would take it that when you shook the dust off your feet, there was probably a scene or an incident that they know how you feel. And you've spoken into their life. And hopefully, when the Bible says, with such a person, don't even eat, there comes that time when you back away almost totally. They know why. And you're still hoping. All you can do at that point is pray and go on. But you can't let that ruin the rest of your life. There's an old thing about you're as happy as your most unhappy child. That's not fair to the other kids. And the kids who have been faithful, the grandkids who have been faithful, encourage them, boost them up, to the extent that maybe sometimes the other kids say, I wish I had that. I know why that's been cut off from me.
Another good resource is David Faust's book, Not Too Old.
That is a good book. Yeah. David Faust has written a book, Not Too Old, and if you're too old, read that book. Anybody else before we dismiss? Okay.
I got 6 grandkids, but 3 you can't see because they live a distance, and that's their schedule, they're older. But I got 3 younger ones, they're like 7, 9, 11. But we really can't spend the individual time with them because they're busy, they're like scouts, sports and stuff like that. So when we do have them, it's like a package deal. So is there a time that as they get older, you try to spend individual time? Because I know when they're younger, it's a little harder.
Yeah, but if you have 3 or 4 of them at a time, they're playing with each other. I mean, you're still developing a relationship, but the most precious time are those individual times. Even when you got 3 of them, you can single one out and say, hey, come on out here and help me plant flowers. Ride with me in the car. Single them out a little bit and divide them up a little bit, and look for those one-on-one times. Let's close with prayer. Father, I thank you for this conference. I thank you for the commitment of these people to biblical values and their desire to pass the baton of faith on to their children and their grandchildren. Would you make us wiser than we are? Would you help us to be alert to opportunities just to plant a seed, just to say a word, or those times we need to preach a sermon? Help us to be able to do that so that our be said about us the way it was about Lois. And I know, Timothy, of your faith. It first existed in your grandmother Lois. So may our children and our children's children see that kind of faith in us. We pray in Christ's name. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Real Life Theology Podcast. If you would like early access to all of the 2025 Renew Gathering breakout sessions, please check out our premium podcast feed. The link is in the description. You will not only get access to all the breakouts, but you'll get access to all the main session recordings as well. So check that out. It's great value. Hope you guys have a great day.